Feedback is one of those things that I rarely see talked about in neither the creative nor business world, and it's understandable why. Feedback is inherently a point of anxiety for both the one receiving and giving it, but it's also something that we can't and mustn't avoid. Whatever kind of professional work that you do that involves putting words on a page or canvas, it is going to be looked at and scrutinized by other people. And if you're a creative who is serious about wanting to craft better stories, even if it is just for yourself, then you're going to have to accept that receiving feedback is the best way of improving. As of the writing of this video, I've worked in the business world as a professional technical writer and marketing content specialist for over 4 years now. I hold a modest bachelor's degree from a Russell Group University in history, and I've had a passion for writing stories for as long as I remember. Yes, I know I'm not published yet, and it fills me with great shame, but I'm working on that, okay, Dad? I'm telling you all of this not to brag, but to demonstrate that I have a variety of writing experiences, and with those experiences has come a lot of feedback from different sources, from managers to professors to beta readers to friends, family, enemies, the whole lot. Some of that feedback has been fantastic and has shaped me to be the writer that I am today, whilst other feedback has been frankly a waste of my time to even read. All of it, however, has given me a thick skin, and thus a good relationship with criticism, and so I want to offer some thoughts and advice to people who either write, or who have to assess writing in whatever capacity. This video is going to look at feedback from both the perspective of the editor and the writer, and will hopefully help bridge the gap between the two. We shall see, I guess. I'm John from the Author's Anvil, and this is another episode of Foundations of Writing, How to Give and Receive Feedback. Enjoy. So, you've requested some work to be done, or you're expecting work from a writer. You've already spent hours today looking over other pieces of work. You've already read the same essay 30 times from 30 other students. You've already had to look at the website copy that the rest of your team has produced. You've already read several terrible manuscripts from hopeless writers who are trying to get published. You've analysed, assessed, and appraised countless words and structures. And now, you get another piece of work to edit. Delivering constructive feedback is one of the most important writing skills you can possess, especially if you're a teacher or a manager. However, it can also be one of the hardest things to do. If someone has done a bad job, then you don't want to create conflict, but you also want them to improve so that the next thing that they deliver you is more up to scratch. There's the old adage that sometimes you've got to be cruel to be kind, and when you're at the end of your working day or you're stressed with other things to do, it can be easy to default to this mentality when you don't have time to be polite or diplomatic. Having said that, I firmly believe that taking the time to deliver high-quality feedback is going to save you time in the long run. Your writer or student will be more likely to deliver better work next time, which will require less editing. And if the piece is something that will be evolving with iterations, then you'll also cut down the number of redrafts that will have to happen. It is thus in your best interest to put the time into delivering good feedback, even when you think that you're too busy to do so. Here are some top tips that you as an editor or teacher or manager can do to make sure that you give that great feedback. Number 1. Let the recipient know how you deliver feedback. This might seem like a moot point, but if you're the sort of person who likes to just deliver blunt feedback that could come across as rude, then let the writer know this before they hand in that first draft. Make it clear that the blunt or direct style of your feedback is purely to do with efficiency and has nothing to do with your personal feelings towards the person or work. It's a really simple thing, but trust me, it goes a long way into making someone take what you have to say on board if they know that you're not intentionally being an asshole. It takes 10 seconds to say, but will save you a lot of explaining down the line. The second thing I want to talk about is formatting. Yes, I'm not even going to talk about the actual feedback yet, but rather how you present said feedback. If you're using Google Docs or another collaborative word tool, then for the love of Stephen King, please use suggest or comment mode rather than direct editing. As of the recording of this video, neither Google Docs nor Microsoft 365 have created a clean-looking UI to present direct edits. Commenting means that the writer can actually compare their work to your suggestion in a much easier way. It also means that you come across as way less of an asshole, because direct editing implies that you as an editor think that you are more right than the writer. This may be the case a lot of the time, but there will also be times where you are wrong, and so you shouldn't just presume to immediately know that your edits are the correct thing to do. Kind of like the first point I made, but it's really important to have a good relationship with your writer or student if you want them to progress, and so just doing little things to humble yourself, like making suggestions rather than direct editing, can go a long way into gaining their respect. I know this is more difficult to do if you're editing or giving feedback on a physical piece of writing, but I think what you can do there is make suggestions in the margins and white space, and then use arrows and brackets to point to the parts of the writing that you're commenting on. I suppose I can sum up this second point by just saying that your feedback needs to leave the original draft as unmolested as possible. At the end of the day, writing belongs to the writer, and even if it is a load of word vomit, then they should be the ones to clean it up, not you. So now that we have pre-communication and formatting out of the way, let's talk about the actual feedback. Just as the writer has hopefully done, you as the editor or teacher or manager must always keep the following questions in your mind. Has the writer communicated the goal or point of the piece? Have they written it in a way that is appropriate to the target audience? Is the writing compelling? With those three questions firmly in our minds, I'd now like to show how I personally try to deliver feedback for certain things. Feedback, like any writing, needs to be clear and concise. For simple grammatical errors, then you just need to put the correction. When something should be deleted, then I'd simply put remove or delete. We'll talk about explanations in a bit. When I think something should be reworded, then I put the part of the sentence in quotation marks to make it clear that it is the suggestion, then I will offer a small explanation in normal text above or below it. This again just makes it as clear as possible about what my suggestion is. For structural changes, I will either call out a sentence or section that I think should be moved, or I will highlight the white space between paragraphs. When it comes to a point or a thing that could do with more expansion, I not only ask for the writer to deliver such a thing, but I also try and give a very brief explanation as to why or how. As a writer, it can be very frustrating when we're told we just need to explain more without any further guidance. As someone who firmly believes in the power of concise writing, it is important to know why I should bleed further onto the page. So let's pretend you've now gone through the document or essay or chapter. You've decorated the margins with lots of comments and corrections, but are you done?
Oh, hell no!
The last thing you need to do is give a general summary of the feedback, either at the beginning or end. This is where you can think about the three key questions that we mentioned earlier. Has the goal or objective of the piece been communicated? Are there any issues with the tone of voice or style in terms of the audience that this writing is going to go in front of? Was the writing compelling? Again, if there are issues with any of those 3 points, you must explain what has gone wrong. You don't need to write a whole essay, who has time for that, right? But just 1 or 2 sentences to give them something to go off. The worst thing you can ever do to a writer is simply say, I don't like it, or this is bad, and not give them an explanation as to why. Oh wait, last point, I promise, but something else to say about giving feedback is a point that a surprising amount of people forget when they're handing back work to a writer or student. Make sure you point out what the writer has done well as what they've done wrong. Not only is this important for keeping them motivated, but it's also the other side of the coin for improvement. The writer might have done something well without realising it, so having someone point it out will flag for them to do it next time. Maybe they nailed the tone of voice for some website copy, or maybe they wrote a really nice metaphor. Whatever it is, make sure you remember to tell them about the things they did well, either with comments throughout the piece or through the short summary that we just discussed. With all of this in mind, you can deliver this feedback safe in the knowledge that the next draft or next piece of writing that you'll receive from that person will hopefully be of better quality than before. But what's it like for the writer once you've sent their draft back? Let's now move on to how to receive feedback as a writer. So you've written a story, or business proposal, or website content. You've spent hours pouring your creative or intellectual soul into this piece of work. Early mornings, late nights, missed meals, countless cups of coffee. You've redrafted and rewritten and reshaped the words until they're ready to be put out into the world. You hit send or submit or deliver the work in whatever way you do it. And then you wait. You wait for your beta readers or writing group or boss or college teacher. What will they think? How will they respond to the fruits of your labour? Will they think it's too hard to understand or too patronising? After an agonising wait, your writing finally comes back, and it has amends. So the first thing that I want to talk about when it comes to receiving feedback, and probably the hardest thing to do, is mindset. Writing in any context is a deeply personal labour of love, and so it is very understandable to get attached to your work and see any criticism against it as an emotional attack. Comments you receive might be blunt and come across as rude, But hopefully the person or people who is giving you the feedback has made it clear that this is simply an efficiency thing rather than them being hypercritical. Even if they haven't made that clear though, I would still try and give them the benefit of the doubt. Teachers and managers and editors are extraordinarily busy people who are likely to be stressed with other responsibilities, so while not preferable, their bluntness might just be a result of having a bad day. Do not take it personally. The other big point I want to make around mindset is that no matter how experienced or novice you are around writing, you can always learn something. You can always improve. There's a reason why even the most successful writers still have editors and assistants around to help them, and this is because we are human. We make mistakes. When going through feedback then, you must try your best to remove your ego and look at the writing almost as if you're a secondary editor of the work. At the end of the day, you want to improve, and the key to improvement is accepting feedback. For the love of F. Scott Fitzgerald then, remove your ego. With your mindset in the right place then, you can start to go through and read the comments. Nothing to really say about grammatical stuff. Shift happens, but just double check that the spelling or punctuation edit is legit before accepting it. I can highly recommend tools such as Grammarly for checking stuff like grammar, and it's a really good tool that comes with an extension as well, so give it a go. Anyway, before I talk about receiving feedback on creative work, I just want to first impart some advice when it comes to professional and academic work. What I'm about to tell you is something that I still struggle with to this day, and although it annoys me to no end, it's a hard fact that we as writers have to accept. Sometimes people care more about their vision than good writing. There will be times in your life when you're writing an essay for a narrow-minded university tutor, or a technical document for a boss, or some website copy for an external client, and they have a very specific idea in their heads about what they want. I told you just a minute ago about the importance of being able to let go of your ego, but here's the thing. While you might have the humility and decency to do so, unfortunately there are many people who do not. And sometimes that can be really tough to accept. You can sometimes give them pushback on their feedback, you can prove to them objectively that what you've written is better than what they want, but unfortunately these kinds of people are so self-obsessed that they will not back down. My advice here then is unfortunately to just let them have their way. As long as you've delivered what they want and they've paid you or given you the grade that you need, it's not worth fighting them, trust me. The only time that I would push back is if they have given you a spec or brief that you have genuinely followed and now they're going against it. In that scenario then, you can of course quote them on the brief and show the evidence in your work that you followed it, but if you can't do that for whatever reason, then don't bother. I know this sounds kind of doomer, but they will not learn by listening to you. I know we all want to deliver high quality work, and that's a really great principle to have, but as I've said, there are people who care more about getting their way than accepting that someone knows better, even when that someone is a professional writer. Letting go of a project in this way is tough, and can be really soul-crushing. One of the things that helps me at least when I've had a difficult client or I've had someone strong on me on website copy or something is that at the end of the day they're embarrassing themselves by putting up bad writing and not listening to a professional. Okay, bit of rant over, let's get into some more actual advice. When it comes to receiving feedback on creative work like a story you've written, you've got to remember that the reader experience is going to be very different from yours. For example, you might have written a character that's supposed to be charming, and in your head they're charming, but if you haven't communicated that properly, then they might have come across as creepy or cringy to the audience instead. If you're sure whether or not you have communicated effectively, what I can recommend is that you try and put the work in front of other people and see whether they had the same reaction as well. However, if you're just keeping the work to just one person, then again, I really need to hammer home the importance of removing your ego and trying your best to look at the evidence that the person has presented to you. Ask yourself this question: am I disagreeing with this person because I'm right, or is it that I'm embarrassed for making a mistake and I'm taking it out on them as a way of dealing with it? Come on, we've all been there. Okay, enough on the ego point. Let's get back to some more general things on accepting feedback. Hopefully you've had a good read through of the feedback and you've actioned or jotted down what the editor has left you. If the writing is something that you're going to be giving back to someone for a redraft, then I would heavily suggest adding a summary at the start of the document talking about what you've done to improve. This shows the editor or professor or manager that you've listened to them, which is going to improve your working relationship with them and make them more likely for them to listen to your counter feedback if you have any. And if the person has given you feedback that has improved the piece and you've learnt something, then tell them. It costs you nothing to do, but can mean the world to someone having a bad day. Trust me. To summarise, When it comes to receiving feedback, you've got to put the craft and the writing first. If you truly want to get better at writing and produce high quality work, you've got to receive and action upon feedback, especially when it's coming from someone more experienced than you. Don't get me wrong, sometimes editors and the people who give feedback are frustrating and unhelpful, but even that bad feedback can still be helpful if it makes you check and reaffirm what you've done. Although yeah, let's face it, some feedback is just dumb. So, let's conclude this video, shall we? If you're the person giving the feedback, the feedbacker, it's important to communicate your editing style to the writer beforehand, format your editing to be clear and concise, keep those 3 key questions in the back of your mind with every comment you make, and then lastly, provide a short summary of your feedback when you're finished. And as a writer, what you must keep in mind when receiving feedback: remove your ego. Accept that sometimes you have to create subpar work in order to appease egomaniacs. If redrafting, provide a short summary and evidence that you've actioned on the feedback given. Remember that your journey to becoming a better writer is paved by feedback. I hope this video has provided some good food for thought. There is definitely more to talk about here, and I'll probably end up making another video in the future that covers some more points, but for the time being, I urge you to try out some of the advice given here. I assure you it'll be worth it. Feedback is always going to have the potential for conflict, but by putting some more thought into this process, both editors and writers can at least have more respect for one another, and hopefully create something better together. Thank you very much for watching. This has been a topic that I've wanted to cover for a while, so it's good to finally get it out of my system. If you enjoyed listening to my dry, pretentious British accent, then why not give some of my other videos a gander? Got any feedback for me? Leave a comment down below. Regardless of what you decide to do next though, hope you enjoyed the video, thank you so much for watching once again, hope you're having a great day, and remember to keep writing.